creme de la crop. Yes, that's what I'm going to call you guys for my art videos. I think by this time I can stop introducing myself, but if you must know, my name's Arbdog / coming at ya. Welcome to my acrylic painting tutorial, Paint With Me, where I will show you guys how to do a painting from beginning to end without skipping no steps, except for just one, okay, where I do the birds. But I needed both hands, okay, come on guys. In this video, we're gonna talk about the things that you need to do a painting and just kind of go over like the basic tips on how to get a painting done without running into too many issues, okay? So I'm thinking that we could do kind of like a landscape. That is kind of my favorite thing to do at the moment, although I'm thinking about doing portraits soon. So anyway, landscape for today. Before the video, I hadn't decided what I was gonna be doing. Like I wasn't really sure which biome I wanted to do, but by the end of it I did find out that I was going to do this, like, I don't know, dreary lake scene. Okay, so that's what we're doing. I'm splitting this video up into a part 1 and a part 2 because it would be too long otherwise, and this entire painting should take you guys like no more than half an hour, as long as we're kind of moving at the same pace. Before we get started, please make sure that you subscribe to this channel, because I mean, by this point you have no idea what I'll put out next, okay? And you do not want to miss it. I'm gonna tell you that much. This is part 1. Make sure you check out part 2 afterwards, okay? And without further ado, let's jump right in. So the first thing that you're gonna need is this. Okay, you're gonna need a drink. Just kidding. You need a cup to put water in. The water is gonna be useful throughout the painting process, and I'll explain why later. But yeah, and use like a cup like this, like a red Solo cup, because you don't want to use like one of your mother's nice china cups, okay? China-ware, I don't know what they call it, dishware. Just don't do that, because if the paint ends up staining, then it's gonna be real bad. You're gonna get in trouble, okay? So yeah, a red Solo cup. And if you like to host parties, you're one step ahead of the game, okay? And now that we're on social isolation, there's no need for them. You're not hosting parties. You better not be hosting parties, okay? You will also, oh, a mosquito just flew by my phone. Okay, anyway, the next thing that you're gonna need is paint, okay? So I have the Artist Loft brand from Michaels, and if I remember correctly, it was only about $5.99 Canadian per bottle or per tube. And like the first time you paint, yeah, you're gonna have to invest in some things, but it really just is an investment the very first time, because after that point, you're just reusing the same stuff, the same paint, the same the same paint, the same paint brushes, etc., etc. The only thing that you might need to re-up on more often is your canvas, right? A new canvas for each painting. But I think in all these years, like 3 years that I've been painting, I haven't had to buy new paint. Maybe I've re-upped on the black one, but that's it. Everything else, no. Another thing that you're gonna need is your trusty paintbrush. And I have 2 trusty paintbrushes, okay? There you go, 2 trusty paintbrushes. I have a thick one for doing like the bigger areas and getting like a nice, you know, beautiful brush stroke in there. And I don't know what brand this is, but I think it's also Artist Loft. And then I have like a nice thin one for doing, I'm just kidding, for doing like more intricate, detailed stuff, and for getting kind of those small areas. And precision, it's for precision. The next thing that you'll need is a palette or somewhere to put your paint. I'm recording this in post right now because this was definitely clean beforehand, but I haven't washed it, okay? And God knows if it'll even come off now, but I think this is supposed to be reusable and you're supposed to be able to wash it. But that being said, also my dog got at it, okay? Because he's a fiend, all right? Yeah, that being said, like this I just started using because my family bought me it, and it was only about $1.25 from the dollar store. And before that I used to use styrofoam plates. They get the job done, and you may not be able to wash the paint off of them, but you can just, once the paint dries, you can just put paint on top of it, so it's no big deal. The next thing that you'll need is a canvas, okay? This is not the one that we're going to be using. We'll be using like a square one. And this is also Artist Loft. This is from Michaels. It's also level 1. Where does it say that right there? And I have zero idea what that means, but hopefully it has something to do with the fact that it's used for acrylic paint. Okay, so I guess you can look into that if you want, but that's what I'm using. And you can also get canvases at Jisk or Yisk. They sell big canvases in a pack of 2 for a pretty good price. So when I want to do bigger paintings, I usually go for something like that at Yisk. Another thing you're going to need is a single piece of paper towel. The reason for that is to control the amount of water on your paintbrush. It matters more when you have paint on the canvas or paint on your paintbrush, because if you put too much water on the paintbrush, it's going to run a lot, and you might even end up taking the paint off of the canvas, which just completely ruins things, and you have to wait for it to dry and deal with it later. So don't do that. And if you don't have enough water, again, the paint won't go very far, and you also run the risk of not having enough of a medium for your paint to move in, which will also take paint off of the canvas, and that's just not good. And I didn't bring a piece of paper towel upstairs for my painting process because if I did go downstairs afterwards to do that, my dog would have come into my room and he would have, mucked up everything in here, and it would have been a whole ordeal and a story for another time. Okay, so I didn't do that. I just made do without it, and you'll see how that causes some issues later. You're also gonna need like old newspapers or like a tarp or something to put underneath your canvas or your easel if you have one, because if your paint spills or if you're splashing, then it might damage the tabletop or the desktop or the countertop that you're painting on top of, and that wouldn't be good, because again, your mother will be angry. Another thing to keep in mind is the choice of clothing you're wearing. So if you are wearing something nice or white or that you care about, go change your clothes. No, yes, you should. Okay. But essentially, like, the paint again could splash or spill, and you really don't want to ruin something nice. So go put on something you don't care about, and then we can paint. Okay. If you try to paint your canvas without there being a lot of water involved, it's not really going to go very far. So that's what the water is for. It's to provide a medium for the paint to move around and spread in. So always make sure that your paintbrush is first of all wet before doing anything. And then the first step should always be to wet the entire canvas so that it can actually hold on to the paint that you put on it.
Your canvas is now wet.
So a nice thing about painting is that you can actually make whatever color you want by mixing paint. And one very important thing about painting that I just kind of happened to learn the first time I picked it up is that you have to start from the background. With that in mind, the thing we're going to start with is the sky. So we'll mix our paints for the sky, and we'll have blue and white because we need to make the blue lighter. Because I don't know about you guys, but I don't live in a place where the sky is this dark or even this color ever. I don't think I've ever seen it that color. So basic color mixing 101 tells us that by adding white to blue, you can make a lighter blue. Okay, so we'll do that.
So we're going to use the thicker paintbrush to mix, which is the same one we used to wet the canvas. And now we're going to mix the paints. And we have to think about ratios when we're mixing paint colors together. Like, we have to think about how dark this blue really is, and just keep in mind the fact that dark is dominant, I think, as a general rule of life. So the result will always lean more to the dark side if we use equal parts of both paints. So what we want is a bit of a lighter blue for the sky. So what we'll do is use more of the white and only a little bit of the blue. And just make sure that you have some water on your paintbrush so that there's a bit of a medium for it to, mix around and move in. Make sure that you also mix the paint evenly so that there are no visible streaks of blue or white, because otherwise that will get onto your painting. And there you have it. You have your lighter blue color for the sky. Okay, so we have some paint on the brush already, so we can just get right to it. We're just going to add a bit more water on it, and then we can start painting the sky. when you're painting, you always want to start with the background and move your way up to the foreground, layer by layer. Because when the back layer dries, you can paint over top of it, versus if you are going to start from the foreground, it's going to be really hard to get behind some of the stuff that you're doing, and that paint just might end up going on top of something you already painted, and then you might have to redo it. So it just doesn't make any sense at all. So like I said, start from the background and move your way up to the foreground. And that is why we're going to be starting from the sky, because there's usually never anything behind the sky in our general eye line. You'll notice here that my paint isn't really getting on the canvas very well, and that's because the canvas is already dry. That means that there's not enough of a medium for the paint to travel in on my paintbrush. So first, you can try getting a bit more water, and that should help a little bit. But try not to keep adding water too many times, and make sure that you do go back for some more paint as well. Otherwise, you'll run into other issues like pulling the paint off the canvas and leaving white streaks, which is not fun to deal with. So yeah, add water and add paint as well. You also want to make sure that you paint far enough on the canvas to reach further than your cutoff for the next layer. So for example, if your mountains were going to start here, then you're not just going to stop the sky here, because your mountains could have some hills and some valleys like this or whatever, and it would be a nuisance to have to try and repaint the white areas that end up showing behind the mountain afterwards, because then you might get blue paint on top of your mountain. And like I already said, this is a good example of why you should start from the background too, but also a good example for making sure that you paint far enough so that you don't leave any unpainted areas or unfinished areas behind your next layer. Now, you'll notice I just did some vertical brush strokes here. I don't recommend doing that if you're primarily doing horizontal brush strokes. It just looks a lot cleaner if you keep it consistent. That being said, if you develop a style in which you want to use consistent brushstrokes, then by all means go for it. It can also look more natural too, because the sky isn't going to be the same color everywhere you look. Like there might be clouds, or maybe the sun is shining on a different area. So sometimes I like to keep it just a little bit inconsistent. That's kind of my thing too though. Like I like doing messy, inconsistent brushstrokes wherever I'm not doing detail. And actually, you can check out my art on Instagram at arbs_art, ARBS_ART. I'll put the link in the description if you guys want to check it out. Give me those likes, give me those follows, you know, I'm all about that.
Another fun thing about painting is that if you make a mistake, you can just wait for it to dry and then paint over it later. At a certain point, that becomes like not a successful strategy, because it'll like become thicker and thicker on the canvas and it just looks weird. Trust me, I've done it. But in most situations, if you do make a little mistake, it's very easy to fix. And I'm partial to that sort of art creation, because I used to draw and I used to use pen for whatever reason. I don't know why. But I would make a mistake and then I would have to make it into something else and make it make sense, because I had no other choice. And I guess I would, couldn't just move on from that one thing without it looking adequate. So I don't know, yeah, painting's kind of like that too. So it's good stuff.
So I was thinking we could do a silhouette of mountains, nothing too detailed for this one. So all we need is a bit of black paint, and we will use our smaller paintbrush to get those fine lines of the silhouette. Just make sure to get it wet. Now let's put the silhouette here. Okay. Mountains. Maybe we'll go for a bit of a sharper one there. A bit of a dip here. Yeah, something like that. So there you go.
there's our mountain outline. If you have some paint left over, feel free to pop it onto the canvas. You can just do that, you know. And then go ahead and switch to your bigger paintbrush so we can fill the mountain in with efficiency. And also, I think it would kind of ruin the smaller paintbrush if you started just stroking it across the canvas. And before you use the bigger paintbrush, make sure that you take off the blue paint by cleaning it out in the water cup, because that would be just terrible. Okay, let's get some of that water off. Grab some black paint and take it to the board. Now, for the edges of the mountain, it might be hard to paint precisely if you do horizontal strokes, so it might be easier to paint along the angle or the incline of the mountain. So feel free to kind of, change your brush stroke a little bit. Also, sometimes the other side of the paintbrush has more paint on it, so you don't need to go back over to your paint to get more. You can just flip over the paintbrush and use that side. And when it starts to look a little gray or dull, that would be a good time to grab some more paint. If for some reason you do go out of the lines, like let's just say you don't have that much control and you did something like what I just did right there, then it's not the end of the world. Like I said earlier, you can fix it by adjusting it right here, right now, because nobody knows what you were trying to paint, and it's art, so no one really cares. That sounds terrible. What I mean is, art is in the beholder's eye. So just adjust it and make it into something else. The other thing that you can do is just wait for it to dry and paint over it again later with the blue sky again. Another good tip is that you don't want to start or stop your brushstroke in the middle, because you'll leave little marks like this on the painting, and that doesn't really look aesthetic. So make sure that you take the stroke all the way from the beginning to the end, like to the edge of the subject that you're painting, and then it'll look a lot nicer. Okay guys, well, we're gonna stop here for this video. If you do want to continue your painting, I suggest you head over to part 2 right here, and then we can finish it off. And again, thank you so much for watching part 1, and please make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. See you guys at part 2.